Hey everyone, welcome to this latest episode of Hacker Toolbox, where I go through my toolbox and tell you a bit about some of my favourite tools. So this week I'm talking about Autorize. So Autorize is a free Burp extension, completely 100% free, totally works on Community Edition, you don't have to pay for it. And how you can use it to actually find IDORs. So what it does is essentially you log into two accounts. So you have your victim and you have your attacker. And what you do is you configure the tool, put in the attacker's cookie, and every single time you make a request with the victim, it will then send another request with the cookie swapped out for the attacker. And it will compare the response and say, you know, actually we've been able to bypass this, or this is actually enforced and we weren't able to bypass it. And this can be really useful for testing, especially large APIs. When we think about like API hacking, especially if you do like a demo or you do a CTF, they only have like a few endpoints to test. But actually, if you look at like a proper API, they're going to have hundreds of endpoints, one for each resource, and you've got to test every CRUD. So you might start off with, 100 different resources, but you have 4 requests for each resource. So that is then 400 things to test, and on top of that you then need to test with 2 accounts, so that might be 800 requests you then have to make. It just helps remove a bit of that manual testing. So once again, this video is sponsored. This video is very kindly sponsored by Integrity. Integrity is a fast-growing bug bounty platform. So they have the targets, they allow you to report bugs, and then they pay out for bugs. Now, because they're growing so fast, there is so many opportunities. With new programs and scope changes all the time, there's always plenty of new and fresh things to hack. In both their public and even invite-only programs, I love working with them because they're huge supporters of the bug bounty community, sponsoring not just my content, but other creators too. I know a lot of you folks have already signed up and even found your first bugs or participated in the XSS challenges and gotten swag rewards and gotten bounties. And I'm really so happy for you all. If you want to sign up too, you can use my link on screen or in the video description, which is go.integrity.com/Katie, go.integrity.com/Katie. Now, another announcement is this is the final video for our monthly giveaway. So this month, well, I was intending this to be a month, but it's ended up going over. So in my past 2 videos, I talked a lot about this giveaway, and essentially you have each video you can put an entry in, and I'm going to put all the entries together. So you essentially get 1 entry for each video you watch. So I'm giving away 1 lifetime membership to bugbountyhunter.com, 10 Insider PhD swag packs, which include not just my stickers, but stickers from Portswigger, from Integrity, from Maltego, and basically all other swag that I have. 5 1-month memberships to Pentest Lab Pro, and 5 2-month memberships to Try Hack Me Premium. Now, if you'd like to win, well, all you need to do is comment in the video with an answer to the following question, which is, what's your favourite bug bounty tool? And they often say, when all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail, so what is your bug bounty hammer? Make sure you include the hashtag BBHammer, just so I know that it's an entry rather than a comment, so that way I can make sure I can filter all the entries out really easily. So, Autorize in a nutshell. What is it? Automate testing for APIs. It's a Burp add-on. It's free. The output is in an additional Burp tab. What makes it good? It gives you a good place to start hunting when dealing with particularly larger attack surfaces and APIs. What does it lack? You can only test 2 accounts and unauthenticated. That's primarily the disadvantage of it. What does it replace? Manual testing, basically. And who made it? This is made by Barack on GitHub, and it's also available on the Portswigger App Store. So, we know we have a valid IDOR bug when we meet these kind of 3 conditions. We can access something without being logged on, or we access something on our account when logged into another account, or we access some admin functionality even if we don't have permissions. So an IDOR is one of these 3 things, right? And this is what we can test. So because Autorize will automatically test if a interaction can still be done without logging in, and we can test cross accounts, we can actually test 2 of these IDORs really, really easily. And I've told you in the past that you should test every endpoint, right? So user account A should be able to like check videos, create a video, read a video, update a video, delete a video, make a comment, read a comment, update a comment, delete a comment, update themselves. But when we talk about user B, we should start to see some declining. User B shouldn't be able to upload a video on user A's account, nor should they be able to make a comment in user A's name, but they should be able to read user A's comments. And this gets a bit complex when we think about it, but all I've told you in the past is test every endpoint. Like, test every CRUD functionality, every single functionality, see if you can do something across attacks, and that's really across accounts, and that's really important, because if you're able to do something to your own account, that's not an IDOR. It's only an IDOR when you can do it to another account. And I described these kind of three types of IDORs: typical IDOR, unauthenticated IDOR, and permission IDORs. So what this is going to help with is essentially that typical and unauthenticated IDOR. Now, you can kind of imagine this is a lot of testing. So for every resource, we need to test each CRUD operation. So that's 4 CRUD endpoints per resource. For these types of testing, plus 1 test to check exists. So, you know, testing whether or not you can do it unauthenticated, cross accounts, or cross permissions. We might be making 4 tests per CRUD endpoint. And it might take us a few attempts to be sure, so maybe 3 requests per test. So if we have an API with 5 resources, we're going to end up testing 80 API endpoints, making 240 requests. And they might not even lead to a bug. And what Autorize does is just make that easier. Instead of having to write requests manually, Autorize will automatically make 2 additional requests as you browse the website. So 1 without cookies, so that would be our unauthenticated request, and 1 with a different account's cookies. So you're logged in as your victim, you play around, make a post. At the same time, you are logged in just to get the cookie of an attacker. You put the attacker's cookie in, and if you're able, with your attacker, to make a post on user A's account, even if you're not logged in as them, that is our IDOR, right? So what Autorize does is kind of give you a starting place. You can just sit there browsing the website normally. It makes it a lot easier. It's not always correct. Sometimes it's also unsure. It will have question marks, but it's always that kind of, oh, is it worth my time to look idea. And it doesn't solve IDORs, so it's easier to triage potential endpoints, but you've always got to validate manually to check. It can still be challenging to test complex permission hierarchies. It doesn't solve mobile app testing, but particularly for large attack surfaces and APIs, it's really useful. They do need a single login point so we can easily reuse the cookies, but for the most part, it should be fairly straightforward. So how do we install Autorize? How do we actually get this up and running? So the first thing to know is the Burp add-on. So all you need to do is go via the App Store on Burp or GitHub, download something called Jython, and this lets us use Python-based add-ons in Burp. So let's go over and how we do that. So I'm going to switch over to Burp and show you how I'm going to get started here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to need is Burp Suite Community Edition. You don't have to pay for this extension, you can just use the free version of Burp. We're then going to need this thing which is called Jython. So you're going to go to download on the Jython homepage and download the Jython standalone. So all you need to do is just click that, save it, just stick it on your desktop or something like that. So all I'm going to do is pop it on my desktop. It's just gone onto another screen so you can't see it, but it's on my desktop now. So then all you need to do is you go to into Burp, go into Extender, and you can see here it says Burp extensions that you customize Burp's behavior using your own or third-party tools. So if we go to the App Store and we just Google here Autorize, we can see we can't actually install it because it says to use Python extensions we need to use Jython and configure its location in the Burp extender options. So we're going to go into options, and then we're going to go Python environment, location of Jython standalone jar file. That's the file we just downloaded. So we can select a file. I'm going to go to my desktop, and then Jython standalone here. So I click on this, and then now when I go to the App Store, I should just be able to install it. So I'll wait a few seconds for it to install, and you can see it's done. So if I go into extensions, I can check that it's loaded here, and you can see it's got like extension type, the file name, etc, etc. Now what we will notice is that up here we have actually got a new tab called Autorize. So this is Autorize. This is essentially what it provides for you. So I'm going to switch back over to the slides, and then we can talk about how we actually configure this. Awesome, so we're all set up now. We've got Autorize working, so let's go over the basics of Autorize. So how do we actually use this? So let's switch back over to Burp, and I'll show you how to set it up for very basic testing. Okay, so let's actually configure this. Now, if I just extend the side here, my text is a bit big. So you can see we've got a bunch of settings up here. I'm going to turn on this one, which says intercept request from repeater. I know it's kind of hard to read, but it's because my font is so big. And essentially what that means is that it will also send a, every time I use repeater, it will also send a request. Now this is what we really need to do. So this is our attacker account. So we need to be doing stuff on our victim account and inputting the cookie for the attacker account. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go into proxy, and I'm just going to open the browser. I'm going to turn off intercept. And then we'll notice, here we go, we have our burp. So then I'm going to log in to Generic University because it's what I was already playing with here. And we're going to type in there 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and press login. So that's our victim account, right? This one is the victim. So I'm going to need another one. So I'm going to go up here, File, Incognito window. You can actually use extensions on here, but I find this is just a little bit easier for just doing this simple demo. So this is our attacker account. So I'm going to go in here, use test@test.com, and I'm going to be logged in as Katie. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the proxy, HTTP history, sort this so my most recent one appears first, and then go down to home here and check that this is logged into the right account. So I can see here Katie. So that is our attacker account. So I'm going to go over here, and you see where it says cookie. I'm just going to copy this. Copy down here. I'm going to go into Autorize. I'm going to just replace this and paste it. So I've just replaced it as is. I'm just going to give it so there's no things. You can also have this button which says fetch cookies from last request. So Autorize is currently off, but if I turn it on now and I refresh this, this is the victim, we can see here we've made some requests. So if we have a look at this one, how do we actually see more information? Well, if we go to request and response viewers and press collapse, we can actually see what the original request was, what the modified one was, and then what it was unauthenticated. So have a look at the cookies here. We can double check that we are actually doing cross request by just looking through these cookies and just making sure that you know, we've not accidentally logged into the wrong one. So you can see here that I've just pasted in the cookie. Again, it's just to double check that I'm on the right account here, and I think I am. It does look like, yeah. So this is the original request by our victim. This is the modified request for the attacker. And then we want to check out, you know, it says bypassed here. Let's have a look at modified response, original response, and unauthenticated response. So we can see here that we're getting this result. If we look at the original, we're getting the same result, and if we're looking here, we're getting another result again. So what this means is that we've got an IDOR, because essentially, should we be able to read this data? Well, it's debatable, right? Like, two accounts maybe should be able to view the data, but maybe this unauthenticated one shouldn't. And if we have a look at the top here, you can see here the question mark is enforced, and that's just because what's different about these responses is the navigation. So essentially this says integer. So if I go up here, we can see this is Katie and this is integer. That's the main difference between those two requests. When there is a difference, you can see here original length, modified length, and unauthenticated length. it will say the is enforced. And we can essentially now go in to our target, you know, the interface we're more used to, API, users, go here, send to repeater. And if I send this in repeater, let's say I do it for user ID 1 and press send, and then I go into Autorize, you can see it's also done it for repeater as well. So how do we actually use this? Well, what we would do is we would go in here, basically press a lot of buttons, see what we could do, see what we can kind of cause over here, and press send. And see whether or not, you know, as we do this, we don't really need to test multiple times. We can see whether or not it's enforced. So if we go in here and look at this one, we can see this one has actually been enforced. If we look at the replies here, we can see here we've got a page expired, this one is a redirection, and this one is a page expired. So that could mean that, you know, this is the CSRF token, for example. And then we can have a look in here as well. And for the most part, what you're probably going to see when you test a real website is a lot of enforced. But it's going and looking at these question mark ones that you can actually go into detail and try and figure out. So that's how we basically use it. There's a few other settings, but I'm going to go over those in a moment. Great, so we now know the basics of Autorize and how to use it. But how do we actually use this practically to find bugs? How can we actually combine this with our manual testing? So I'm going to show you some cool features and kind of advanced features of Autorize to get you started. And then show you how I approach a API. And how my brain kind of works Autorize in combination with my manual testing methodologies. Okay, so let's talk practical hunting here. So one of the great things that it allows you to do here is by having interception filters. So we can have things that only have in-scope items or contain something. So one thing I like to put in here is, you know, it has the if not contains regex bunch of things. I might go in here and add a filter, and I might put, you know, if it contains, if URL contains, and I'm just going to put in API and then anything afterwards. So then we can start to add a filter. So we can go here, if you go to modify, we can go /. So this will only check for IDORs where it contains API. So if I refresh this page now, it's only going to send, the home page, it's only going to send that API request. And that can be really useful when you're testing APIs. Another thing is if you go into the enforcement detector, you can actually modify this. So if something's enforced but it's still returning like a 200, you can go in here and do a, you know, if it contains not found, for example. So now if we go to grades 1, API grades, we can see here that we've now been able to go into enforced because we can change what we want the response to look like. And that's really, really helpful because what you can do there is very easily like slightly change the configuration. And especially if you're finding that a enforcement is maybe coming up a lot, but you manually test and it doesn't, I usually go in here and like play around with these. So whether or not the headers contain something, the body contains something, the full response contains something, and this is again for the unauthenticated. Again, same idea, is checking whether or not it meets certain like status codes, for example. And then you can also filter this. So what I usually do is I usually turn off these, so I just see the bypassed. Super useful, super helpful. There's also match and replace rules. Now this is really useful if you've got like user IDs. So if you put in here a user ID that you're already using, so if I go in here and do users, so my victim account here is user ID 8. So if I see user ID, user ID, and I'm just going to do it as a JSON string, 8, I'm just going to replace that with user ID 9. So what that means is that if there is something where you specify a user ID, you can actually also test that one as well. But one of the most useful things to me is just going through these responses and double checking, especially when you start to modify. You know, if I go into repeater here and I'm instead going to do a put request to user ID 7, and maybe I'll go into here and do user ID 7 and then do role ID 1, and I'm just gonna have to do content type application application JSON and press send. I can see here that I've not necessarily managed to update this, so this might be a sign of being an IDOR, but if I go into Autorize, I can see whether or not I was able to bypass it. Again, I can go in here and see what the result actually was. So the unauthenticated response here didn't change it, but neither did any of the other ones. So always useful to go in here and just confirm the behavior that you're seeing. Just because it says bypass doesn't actually mean it was bypassed or did anything. And again, we're looking for changes in our victim account, right? We're looking for changes on this account, not any other account. So once we log on to this incognito window just to grab the admin cookies, we don't care about it anymore. It's only there to grab the admin cookies. And a lot of this is just like trial and error, I'm afraid. Quite a lot of it is just try that. Does it work? No. Okay, try something else. Does that work? No. Okay. Does that work? No. Okay, keep going. But that's kind of how you use Autorize. Super useful tool for finding IDORs. Really helpful, especially when API testing, because of things like all these like filters you can use, and changing how the detector works, and also, you know, exporting things. Really useful if you want to send it to a friend you're maybe collabing with. So that is Autorize in a nutshell. I hope you found this useful, and I will just see you for the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you have a play around with Autorize, and I really hope you find some bugs with it. I'd like to thank Integrity again for sponsoring this video. I really don't take having an advertiser lightly on my channel, and I really do think they do amazing things for the community. It has allowed me to make so many investments into my channel, like improving the audio and editing. And one of the best things is that they care about their community. They interact all the time. They're always replying to hackers. Their community team has got hackers on it. So they're always super active. So please do give them a lot of love from our community to theirs. You can sign on with my link on screen or in the video description, which is go.integrity.com/Katie, go.integrity.com/Katie. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you in the next one.